Hello everyone. In this video, we are going to look at toddler and preschooler nutrition. Let's briefly define the definitions of the life cycle stages. Toddlers are young children from 1 to 3 years, and this stage of life is characterized by rapid increase in gross and fine motor skills. Gross motor skills involve the use of large muscle groups, as exhibited by walking alone, running, walking upstairs, riding a tricycle or a bicycle, hopping and then skipping. Then fine motor skills involve the use of smaller muscle groups demonstrated by stacking objects, scribbling, those are meaningless marks or pictures, and then copying a circle or a square. A preschooler or a preschool-age child is that one from 3 to 5 years. And this stage is characterized by increasing autonomy and broader social circumstances, for example, attending preschool, that is a nursery, or staying with friends and relatives, increasing language skills, and expanding self-control. What's the importance of good nutrition status during early childhood? During the toddler and preschool years, adequate nutrition is required to achieve full growth and development. And in case of undernutrition, there is impairment of cognition and ability to explore the environment. How do we track toddler and preschooler health? The percentage of children living in poverty is a widely used indicator of child well-being, and this rate has increased dramatically in the recent years. And when we are evaluating young children's nutrition status and offer nutrition education to parents, it's always very important to consider the children's home environments. And we also have to make sure that establishing healthy eating habits may not be high on a family's priority list when the home environment is one of the poverty and food insecurity. So it's important to assess all these aspects of the child's home environment. What is the status of their parents? Are they at risk of food security? Are they below the poverty line? And then we can assess their eating habits. Do the family prioritize healthy eating habits, or they eat to survive? So it's always very important to get to know all these aspects before you be able to track a child's health status. Normal growth and development. From birth to 1 year, an average infant triples his or her birth weight, and toddlers gain 8 ounces or 0.23 kilograms and grow 0.4 inches, that is 1 centimeter, per month. And preschoolers gain about 4.4 pounds, that is 2 kilograms, and grow 2.75 inches, that is 7 centimeters, a year. And this decrease in the rate of growth is accompanied by a reduced appetite and food intake in the toddlers and preschoolers. So we find that parents of such children complain of reduced child's appetite and food intake compared to infants. And also parents need to be reassured that a decrease in appetite is part of the normal growth and development for children in this age group. Monitoring children's growth. The growth of a child is usually monitored using calibrated scales and height boards. Toddlers under age 2 years, they are weighed without clothing or diapers because these increase their weight. And then we use recumbent length to determine their length. Children over 2 years are weighed with light clothing on, without shoes and without heavy items like jackets. And then we have to measure the stature with no shoes on. And here we use a height board. Taking the recumbent length, the length of toddlers less than 24 months is measured in the recumbent position. This is in the case of a child that is not able to stand on their own. Then for children above 24 months, these are children that can stand independently. We use the height board. The physiological and cognitive development in toddlers. This is a time of expanding physical and developmental skills. Walking begins as a toddler short and steady steps, and it's improved in balance and agility with time. Progress by month. By 15 months, you find that the child can crawl upstairs. 18 months, the child can run stiffly. At 24, the child can walk upstairs 1 foot at a time. By 30 months, there is alternate feet going upstairs. By 36, a child is able to ride a tricycle. Social development also involves imitating others, for example, parents, caretakers, siblings, and peers during this time. So in this stage, the child begins to learn about the family culture, the customs, and also those related to meals and food. What time do the family eat foods? And how do they eat their food? Do they eat on the same table? Do they eat from the same plate, or they eat from different plates? So the child will start demanding to eat on their own plates, like others. Cognitive development in toddlers. Toddlers usually orbit around their parents like planets, moving away, looking back, moving further, and then returning. And there is a transition from self-centered to more interactive sessions. And vocabulary of these children usually expands by 10 to 15 words at 18 months, and by 100 words at 2 years. 3-word sentences can be spoken by children by the time they're 3 years. Then temper tantrums are very common, they're terrible tools, and this is due to increased determination to express their own will. Development of feeding skills in toddlers. At 6 to 24 months, the child is weaned from the breast. And this is the introduction of solid foods in addition to the breast milk. And when their solid food intake increases, they will learn to drink from a cup. And parents need to pay attention to cues of readiness for weaning, such as a disinterest in breastfeeding. At 12 months, refined pincer grasp that enables them to pick up small objects, for example, cooked peas and carrots, and then put them in their own mouth. Children will be able to use a spoon around this age, but not very well. And they're also able to use better at 2 years, and though they still prefer to use hands, because hands came before forks. By 12 to 18 months, the children learn to chew foods with rotary chewing rather than just up and down movements. And they can also be able to handle chopped or soft table food. From 18 to 24 months, the children are able to use the tongue to clean their lips and have well-developed rotary movements. They can now also handle meats, raw fruits, and vegetables. The gross and fine motor development during the toddler years enhance children's ability to chew foods of different textures and to self-feed. A strong need for independence in self-feeding emerges during the toddler age. Let me do it on my own, the child will tell the mother. So if they don't want to do something, they'll still say, no, I don't want to do this. These are commonly heard phrases in households where toddlers reside. Initial attempts at self-feeding are inevitably messy, but they represent a very important stage of development. So let them mess up as long as they are trying to develop, and it's very fundamental for them. So this is how messy self-feeding can be, but it is okay. It's also very important that parents and caretakers keep distractions, for example, the television, to a minimum during meal times, and also allow their toddlers to practice self-feeding skills and to experience new foods and textures. The child derives pleasure in self-feeding and exploring new tastes. Learning to self-feed also allows the child to develop mastery of an important part of everyday life. Adult supervision of eating is imperative due to the high risk of choking on foods at this stage. So it's important that you don't leave the child to feed alone. When the child is feeding, you have to be close as a parent because they are high risk of choking. Toddlers should always be seated during meals and snacks, preferably in a high chair with the family, and they should not be allowed to eat on the run. They pick a little, run around, come back, pick a little. That one is not healthy. The foods that may cause choking, for example, popcorn, nuts, whole grapes, should not be served to children less than 2 years of age. The feeding behaviors of toddlers. These may have strong preferences and dislikes. Food jugs are very common. A food jug is when a child will only eat one food item or a very small group of food items, meal after meal. So So you have to serve new foods with the familiar foods, and when the child is hungry, that's when they are most likely to eat any new food. Serve the toddler with other family members because they imitate their parents and older siblings, including the eating behaviors. Mealtime is a very good opportunity for the toddlers to practice newly acquired language and social skills, and also to develop a positive self-image. So it is not the time for battles over food or force feeding. Establishing the habit of eating breakfast is also a very important part of healthy eating behaviors. And the family mealtime provides an opportunity for the parents and the caretakers to model healthy behaviors for the young child. The appetite and food intake of toddlers. Toddler-sized portions, that is an average of 1 tablespoon per year of age. For example, a 2-year-old, you can give 2 tablespoons of food. Allow the child to ask for more in case they want. The parents often overestimate portion sizes needed by the young child, and this may contribute to labeling the child as a picky eater or reluctant to eat or sample new foods. So it's important that you give the child just a little, so that when they are done with it, you can add more. Don't give too much. When they see too much food, they may get discouraged from eating completely. Because these toddlers can't eat a large amount of food at one time. And also you have to make sure that nutrient-dense snacks should be avoided. For example, sugary foods that limit appetite for basic foods at meals. Give the child foods that are nutrient-dense but not calorie-dense. Establish regular but flexible meal and snack times, which allows enough time between meals and snacks for the toddler to get hungry. It's also important that the toddlers are allowed to control the amount of food eaten by hunger rather than by parental pressure to eat more. So when you give the child food to eat when they are very hungry, they'll be able to control how much they eat. Compared to when you have a little space between the meals, and then by the time you bring the second meal, they are not interested, and then you, the parent, have to force the child to eat. This is not a good practice. The preschool age children motor capabilities. These preschool children continue to expand their gross and fine motor capabilities. By age 4, the child can hop, jump on one foot, can ride a bicycle, can throw a ball over a hand. Magical thinking, that is cognitive development. Egocentric, they cannot accept another point of view. They learn to set limits for himself or herself. And they're usually cooperative and organized in group plays, like such as building a tower of blocks together. Their vocabulary here will expand to about over 2,000 words, and they begin to use complete sentences. So this is good for preparing for school. They will also test their parents' limits and still resort to temper tantrums to get their way. And these temper tantrums generally peak between the ages of 2 and 4 years. And the child's challenge here is to separate, and also the parent's challenge is to appropriately set limits and at the same time to let go. Another parallel with adolescence. So at this stage, you find that the child and the parent are usually at loggerheads, as it is seen in adolescence. The child wants to get their way, the parent is trying to implement something else. Too tightly controlled limits can undermine the child's sense of initiative and cause him or her to act out, whereas loose limits can cause the child to feel anxious and that no one is in control. So it's always good to moderate the level of control towards the child. The development of feeding skills of the preschool age children. These children can be able now to use a fork, a spoon, and also a cup. The spills will occur less frequently, and the food should be cut into bite-sized pieces. Cutting and using a knife may need some refinement. These children should be seated comfortably at the table for all the meals and snacks. And eating is not as messy a process during the preschool years as it was during the toddlerhood. The foods that can cause choking should be modified to make them safer. For example, cutting grapes in half lengthwise. Adult supervision is also still required for these children. Appetite, feeding behaviors. The appetite is also related to growth, and the growth occurs in spurts during childhood. Appetite and food intake increase in the advance of a growth spurt, and this causes the children to add some weight that will be used for the upcoming spurt in height. So the appetite of a preschool age child can be quite variable, and the appetite increases prior to the spurts of growth. Meal preparation activities of young children. You have to select fruits to make fruit juice and make decisions on what to prepare for a meal. Clean, peel, cut up vegetables. These are some activities that you can let the child try to engage in, but making sure that they do these activities with supervision prevent any incidents of accidents such as cutting oneself. You can ask the child's opinion on what should be prepared for a meal or what fruits be made. Innate ability to control energy intake and preschool age children. Avoid encouraging the child to clean your plate. Much as this can regulate caloric intake, they lack the capacity to select and consume a well-balanced diet. So healthful eating habits are always learned from the environment around them and from their parents. Appetite and food intake. Children may prefer familiar foods if they are comforting to the child or wants exact control. Serve chilled-sized portions. Make the foods attractive. Strong flavored or spicy foods may not be accepted. Control the amount eaten between meals to ensure appetite for basic foods. Avoid a battleground on a child's eating and food selection. For example, forcing them to stay on the table until they have eaten a certain amount of food. So it's very important for the children to share meals with the other family members because it's a very big aspect of child development. Temperament differences. The temperament is the behavioral style of the children. There are three main temperaments. That is 40% easy temperaments, then 10% difficult temperaments, and 15% slow to warm up. So the remaining styles are either intermediate low or intermediate high. The easy temperament, here the child adapts to regular schedules and accepts new foods. But the difficult one is slow to adapt and may be negative to new foods. Slow to warm up, these are slowly adaptable and are negative to new foods, but they can learn to accept these new foods. Intermediate low to intermediate high, this is where there's a mixture of the easy, difficult, and slow to warm up behaviors. Food preference development, appetite, and satiety. Children usually prefer sweet and slightly salty foods and then reject the sour and bitter foods from birth. And they like to eat familiar foods. And so they may need 8 to 10 exposures to new foods before acceptance. The food intake related to parents' preferences. Children raised in an environment where all members of the family eat a variety of foods are more likely to eat a variety of foods. And this can explain the picky behaviors in some children and adults. From childhood, they are introduced to a few foods and they do not get used to these other foods. Consumption of foods high in sugar or fats before meals decreases the intake of basic foods. These foods should be given as a dessert after a basic meal. And they prefer such foods, so it's important for you to regulate their intake. Offering large portions increases food intake and may promote obesity. And also restriction of palatable foods increases preference for the foods. Foods served on a limited basis but used as a reward before they become highly desirable. Coercing or forcing the children to eat foods can have a long-term negative impact on their preference for these foods. And the media can also influence food preferences. A child who watches a lot of adverts on consumption of McDonald's, chicken tonight, these children usually will prefer to eat those foods compared to what is prepared at home, which is more nutrient dense. The feeding relationships. Parents or caretaker responsibilities. What are the children offered to eat? This is an important question for a parent to ask himself. The environment in which food is served, including when and where these foods are offered. This is also important. And then for the child's responsibility, how much do the children eat? and whether they eat a particular meal or a snack. It's also very important to know. So this is basically what we have for this whole lecture. Thank you.